Mi'kmaq lens or your Mi'kmaq eye. And when we think about Adwaptamunk is coined two-eyed seeing, or Adwaptamunk. Truly, this refers to a teaching that when you have Adwaptamunk, you have the gift of multiple perspectives. So the idea is that one of these eyes in the puzzle is that of the Mi'kmaq lens, the traditional knowledge. And the other being that of Western science, of a Western way of seeing the world, a way of being and knowing. And together, they create two eyes, two perspectives to see the world. So the way that we've done this, growing our Mi'kmaq eye, we grow through knowledge, of course, the connections that we hold. We grow through spirit. We grow our Mi'kmaq eye through spirit, because spirit is the way that we relate to the world around us, and it's the connections that we have with our relations, with Msidnogama. So we grow our Mi'kmaq eye and our understanding of the world through those connections. And then, of course, we would grow our Mi'kmaq eye through experiences that connect us with story and with oral tradition and with ceremony and with the harvest through Nadigalimk, with your connections to the world through the four core values. And this way of being is based in interconnectedness, or the interdependence of the world around us. The fact that everything in this world is connected in some way. We don't have to understand that connection, but we have to be a part of it, and we have to understand that we have impacts within that interconnectedness. In the other eye, in the Western lens, it is also based in knowledge, but that knowledge takes on a different form. So the knowledge would take on research. It takes on hypotheses, data collection and analysis. It takes on looking at parts of a system, how they interact within the system, and looking at the system as a whole. But what it lacks is the spirit, is the connection to ceremony and the connection to our relationship and place within that world. And I think there are places where each of these knowledge systems shine. But there is no place that each one should stand alone. So I think the way forward for all of us is to make sure that we are connecting these two lenses, but also more lenses. Because as we grow through life, as we gain experiences and live, we gain perspectives. We meet new people, we see new worldviews, and we gain perspectives through their understanding of the world and through our experiences and connections to Usikhamu, Mother Earth. So to form this, we have to continuously monitor which knowledge system would actually benefit the most of Usikhamu, us included, of Msidnogama. So we have to monitor which knowledge system actually would benefit in that scenario. So we're continuously monitoring this, both of these knowledge systems holding space, but not one standing alone. So sometimes, if you look to the left, it will look like these knowledge systems weaving back and forth, with a traditional knowledge system taking the lead while a Western knowledge system supports, and then flipping to a Western knowledge system taking the lead, and a Mi'kmaq or traditional knowledge system taking a supportive role. Or it could look like both knowledge systems supporting one another, and the connection of these two knowledge systems being that we utilize the strengths of both of these for the benefit of all beings in the world, both living and non-living. So to recap the understandings and my understandings of this world, it's based in Msidnogama, all of my relations. I am kin to everything in this world. Everything is related to me, as it is to you. To understand where I fit in this world, I have to reflect and continuously reflect on what it means for me to be whole in this world, what it means to be. And I feel that it is through my interactions with the world around me, based in the 4 core values, that I am able to balance the 4 aspects of who I am as a person. I think it's really important to always reflect on what it is the words that we say actually mean, because words have power. So in Nederglimp, when we are sustaining ourselves in a good way, what does sustaining mean to you? What does it mean to those who are making decisions? And who is included in ourselves? Who does that actually include? If we take a traditional Mi'kmaq sense of the word, it would include Msidnogama, everyone around us, all of our relations. And then by utilizing Adwaptamunk, by utilizing the gift of multiple perspectives, we then can build a more holistic understanding of how our interactions will actually impact the world around us, also our relations around us, and how can we live in this world taking the proper steps forward, the steps forward that will benefit the most of our relations and impact the least of our relations negatively. So what would come next from all of this? And I've been sharing all of this as a very individual sense, as you as an individual or me as an individual. But the reality is we are collective. We are a community of peoples living here, breathing here, growing, learning. So we can't think all the time in an individual sense. So we have to add to our perspectives. When we think of two-eyed seeing, the puzzle isn't finished. And the next pieces of the puzzle are more people, more perspectives, because I have a lens of me, of my own. It is not one of Mi'kmaq or one of Ulnu. It is one of me. It's built by Mi'kmaq teachings and my experiences and the stories that have been shared with me. And that's why it can share Mi'kmaq teachings, but it is not a Mi'kmaq lens. If I were to go to another Ulnu and ask the same questions that I've been asked, I may get different answers. But those answers are based in the 4 core values, and they've worked through those 4 core values to come to those conclusions. So as we build our collective understanding, our collective perspectives, we begin to finish the puzzle. And it is not until we have a more complete puzzle that we can really live in this world in a sustainable way. So with that, Walaliach, thank you all, and I would love to take questions.
Hi. I thought you did a fantastic job, especially explaining a lot of the theoretical concepts. One of the things you touched on being really important is feeling connected to the land and having a reciprocal relationship. Do you have any practical tips? A lot of us are students from out of province. A lot of us come from like a settler background. And we also all live in a city where it's a little harder to like grow things. So do you have any advice on how to feel connected to the land that we live in and interact with every day?
Well, Alan, thank you for the question. That's a great question, and one that I ask myself coming to the space. Certainly in here, it is pretty difficult to gain connection to the land around you. But as I was walking into this space, I was having a look at some of the trees that line I think it's University Avenue, maybe University Road, Street, whatever the name for it is, and taking notice of what place in their cycle those trees are at. There's a story on the cycle of trees connected with the cycle of the stars, and it's through the name is Muin and the Seven Bird Hunters, so it's the bear and seven bird hunters. And we're told that once Robin, one of the stars in the Big Dipper, harvests Muin with an arrow, he's so excited for the harvest that he wants to be the first to gather the meat from the harvest. And as he does so, he covers himself in blood. And when he sees that he's covered in blood, he goes and rests in a maple tree and shakes off the blood. Some of the blood remains and gives Robin his orange chest. The rest of the blood goes into the trees. And that's why the maple tree is the reddest of all of the leaves in the trees. The story connects with the connection of the stars shifting across the sky and the changing of the leaves and the seasonality of our world around us. And it also teaches that as Mi'kmaq, it is our time to harvest large mammals after Robin has had his harvest. So Robin takes his harvest of Muin, and then we can take our harvest of Diam, of moose. So I think it is through watching the patterns in the world around you, watching the cycles, watching how things are shifting, and starting to think about why they might be shifting and the connections of those shifts to other things that are happening around you in the world. Because sometimes it's not only, like your question, the garden that's in front of you, that you've planted. It might be the reciprocal relationship between birds and berries, for example, like in the beautiful book, Braiding Sweetgrass. The connection of those two beings is reciprocal in a way, even though we aren't part of that connection. So I think sometimes we lose the understanding of around Imsid No'gama. We are part of the world around us, but a lot of the times we are not the central part, which I think in a place like this, it is very important to look outward and see the connections in the world around us. Sometimes in a city, that means that we might not be a part of that connection. But in reality, we then form our understanding of relationship and connection through the way that we see the cycles of the world around us. Because I'm sure when the leaves are changing and the weather is dropping in temperature, there are cycles in us that are happening. The daylight shortens, so we might feel less energetic. We might feel like we have less ability to utilize some of our important pieces. So there are cycles that are happening in us at the same time because we are part of this world. We are relations to all things around us. So we are not disconnected. But you're right, in a city, it is pretty difficult. And I haven't been in this area much, so I don't know how far the nearest public gardens is. But that would be a beautiful space to go and connect with some form of natural space, natural ecosystem. Thank you very much for the question.
Sean, thank you so much for such a lovely presentation. I feel the love. This might be a bit of an outrageous request, but you had mentioned your work with youth, and I was curious if you had any thoughtful learnings or lessons that you had gained from that experience. I know a lot of us in this room are just starting our secondary education, and if anything, any knowledge from that you could share with us.
Well, Alan, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest things I've gained from working with youth, especially lower elementary, even pre-primary, so like 4 years old, is the amount of bias we hold as both young adults or even, I feel, age like 15, I think that's when our bias starts to really run in overdrive. And that bias leads to assumptions. And then the assumptions lead to us not really looking for the spiritual connection to things around us. So I think an example of this would be questions that are asked in a grade 2 classroom. To some may seem outlandish, may seem like there's no merit in that question, but if you really listen to the questions, you can connect a little human trying to understand this vast world around them, and that helps us start to break down our bias and assumption about what it means to be in this world. Because I think something really important for me is finding place, finding my sense of place and belonging. And in lower elementary, every day is a new sense of place and belonging for students. And they're connecting to these stories and the world around them and seeing the cycles of animals and plants around them. And I think that really, just that in general, allowed me to connect to really abstract ideas of what it means to be and what Nadigalimk could be in my life, outside of, harvest or creating sustainability in my connection to the outside world, but more the inside world, central to me. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thank you for your talk. What everyone else has said, it was really great. I was just wondering if you could talk a bit about your experience in the Western science world in your education, because I definitely find that it's very anthropocentric and lacks the spirit, as you mentioned. So I was just wondering if you were able to integrate balance and if you had any advice for other people trying to do that.
Well, Alan, for the question. That is a very it's a very good question, because I feel like through my time in academia as a student, it was really difficult to understand both where was appropriate to include Mi'kmaq ways of being and knowing. And I've come to a place now where I feel it's appropriate in every sense, no matter where it is. It's appropriate to throw in there because it means something and it holds importance, just as a teaching. But when I was in the courses and kind of working through, of course, paper after paper and data set after data set, I began to lose my connection with those teachings, those 4 core values. So I think if you work through something with the 4 core values and you're including Mi'kmaq ways of being and knowing in a way that's actually benefiting all. So I know that a paper in university doesn't feel like you're putting in so much effort that is going to benefit everything around you in the whole world. But if you come from that place and center love in the way that you're kind of approaching it, then you can better equip yourself in terms of where it fits. It's certainly not, after methods and materials, you place Mi'kmaq knowledge holder information or Nadigalimk section. I think it's really important to weave it through everything, because even in materials and methods, we utilize bias and assumption through the way that we interact with the scientific world. So if we then take a step back and think about what methods we're using, what materials we might be using. For example, if I am going to be collecting, let's say, one of my papers in university was around looking at the size of willow gall and if that impacted flower size. So if it impacted the ability for that plant to actually generate flowers, which it didn't, by the way, but I included tobacco in my materials because I offered tobacco when I had to harvest those goldenrod. So even just the act of offering tobacco and forming that relationship, even though it was a very scientific paper, that was my interaction in a traditional sense. So I think there are ways that you can include it, that it feels good. It's in a good way. And then there are ways you can include it that it feels like it's there because it feels like it needs to be there, and not because it's actually benefiting in a way that's authentic. I always go back to the words of Dr. Albert Marshall, in that we have to ensure that things are accurate, authentic, and sacred. So if it's accurate and it's authentically Mi'kmaq, but there's no sacredness to it, then it's not in a good way. So by placing an accurate Mi'kmaq teaching that's authentic to that area in a paper that's on the 12th page that doesn't connect at all to what you're actually looking for, it might not have sacredness. It might not feel good in that sense. I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah, it's a very difficult thing to do, and I appreciate the question.
This question is a little bit less directly related. That's why I waited. But I was just curious, because you were talking about your experience as a harvester of medicines, and I've heard some things about kind of gold thread as a plant, and I was just curious if there was anything about that plant that you would be interested in sharing.
Well, Alan, for the question. So I'll share a little bit about gold thread because it is a medicinal plant, but I don't really have much teachings around gold thread, and it's simply because I have not interacted enough with gold thread to form a relationship rooted in respect. But I know of gold thread as the one that grows in moss, and generally growing underneath trees that have needles, so pine or hemlock or spruce. And if you move the moss away, you can unearth the golden threads of roots underneath. And teachings that have been shared with me are around creating tonic with the gold thread. Again, I have not used gold thread for medicine, and I think it's really important that when sharing about medicines and beings around us, that we ensure that things, again, are authentic and accurate and sacred. And I really feel like I don't have enough understanding of what gold thread has to offer as a gift that I could share the medicinal properties. But it is a beautiful plant, a beautiful medicine. And when I think of gold thread, there's a specific image in my mind of what the forest looks like around me. So I feel like I'm on the cusp of gaining an understanding of what gift gold thread has to offer for medicine. But yeah, thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
We have definitely time for one more question or so, maybe two. Anybody? Well, then I'm asking a question. So, what can we do to unlearn? Because I grew up in a Western scientific system. I studied science. And then I came to Canada and was literally hit by the realization that there's actually more to it. So what can I do to unlearn?
Well, Alan, thank you for the question. That's another great. You have very good questions, folks. This is wonderful. I love getting questions because it allows me to consistently reflect on my understanding of things. So I think unlearning is such an integral part of how we move forward, because if we move forward without kind of checking our biases or our assumptions that we have based on our experiences, then we can't move forward in a way that authentically connects both knowledge systems. I think one of the biggest things for me was feeling a sense of like it's okay to utilize traditional knowledge in a way that's authentic, accurate, and sacred. It's okay even in academia, to utilize traditional knowledge in a way that benefits all. And I think, again, I go back to centering love. And at surface level, it sounds silly, and it might sound like it doesn't need to exist within science. But I think if we all just moved a little bit closer to centering love in our connections with the world around us, I think we would move forward towards that true eduoptimum, like a true connection of perspectives. I think for a long time in university, I felt that the Western science was really the only way forward. That was the only way that I would be able to get anywhere in life. And then after kind of working through that Western science, the courses, the course loads, the data analysis and research, I slowly started to connect that data and research and hypotheses to the understanding I had of the world around me. So an example of this was in Holland College, when we had to do plant identification and the understanding of who the plant is, what its uses are maybe, or where it might live, what ecosystem it loves. And through that, I gained that Western idea, the Western science of the Latin name for all these plants, and created these weird and funky names to remember them by, like lady slippers. And lady slippers is the slipperpedium, because you put your slippers on when you get out of bed. So slipperpedium. So all these silly little things to remember Latin names, and through that, I started to gain recognition of the plants with their English names. And then through that English name recognition, as I walked the forests, I felt I knew another piece of those beings, a piece that I didn't have prior to actually going to that space through college. So I think the unlearning really is just unlearning a way of being, not the knowledge itself. The knowledge itself is really, really important, and it has to remain in that interaction. It's the unlearning of Western science is the only science, is the only way in the real world. I think the only way in the real world as a way forward is eduoptimum, is the connection of both of these really important ways of viewing the world, but also really important perspectives, and the idea that we need to continue to grow those perspectives, not stop at traditional knowledge and Western science. There are many perspectives of the world, and just having two of them, I think, is minimal. I think we need to grow and grow and grow. So I think I shared a lot tonight about Mi'kmaq ways of being and knowing, and tried to connect it as much as I could to Western ways of being and knowing. But there are so many ways of being and knowing in this world. So ultimately, until we can build spaces with people who bring all of these perspectives, we can't even learn those perspectives. So I think that's where the diversity of our student body, of our world, of our systems, that's where we start to unlearn, because voices that have not been heard before begin to get heard and be shared.
That's a beautiful answer, Will Allen.
Perhaps we'll give the last question to someone online. Layla asks, she was asking about, originally about a research team looking to explore eduoptimum more, despite it unfortunately not being in the early project stages. And your last question actually addressed that as well. So now the question, to focus it a bit more, is how to begin to open that invitation with Mi'kmaq leaders to hopefully grow together moving forward while acknowledging that limitation.
Thank you very much for the question, Will Allen. I think, truthfully, I think the first step in connecting with Mi'kmaq leaders or inviting them to tables that you are at is taking a step towards the truth part of Truth and Reconciliation. I think it's really important that you understand the history, Canadian history, before beginning those interactions. Because when we talk about respect and relationship and our responsibilities, and then understanding how to make that a reciprocal situation or interaction, we have to understand where we come from. And for Mi'kmaq people, Mi'kmaq communities, the Mi'kmaq Nation, that place is not a place of proper relationship and proper respect and of all parties understanding their responsibility in that. So I think the first step before interactions are made, before we try to understand how to respect or respectfully do that, is to better understand the situation, the political, the social, the natural situation that we currently live in and what has led to this point. I think that is where I would suggest starting. And then once that information can be both respected and accepted, I think any individual who receives that will have a better understanding of how to act and move forward in a good way. And I don't think that I would be able to share what steps someone would need to take in that sense, because again, I am me. I may be Mi'kmaq and Ulnu, but I could not share what would make a relationship respectful to another person, another group, another community. I think it's important to understand why we're here today. That's where I would start. Thank you for the question.
That's perfect. Will, Lal, and Sean, thank you for sharing your wisdom, and most particularly, thank you for sharing your heart with us tonight.